Vitarataluka Devitam Vishanajatatum Jadanamitam Pavitam Chasanam Kuru. Haribol Chittahari. Hare Krishna. Nice to see you. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Raja Jandaranjana Yashoda Nandana Raja Jandaranjana Yashoda Nandana Raja Jandaranjana Yashoda Nandana Raja Jandaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Raja Jandaranjana Yashoda Nandana Raja Jandaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Stotar Shishimara Bhai Charanara Vinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Stotar Shishimara Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Gaudiya Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem's Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki. Shri Mayapur Navadip Dham Ki. Shri Jagannath Puri Ki. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki. Jamuna Devi Ganga Devi Ki. Samveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. Go Premanande Haribo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. We have the distinct pleasure of being able to sit down for some undistracted time to hear from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna. And so I welcome everyone this morning here at ISV, and those of you who have joined online this morning. Thank you very much for being part of this great yajna to continuously read Srila Prabhupada's books, which have descended from the spiritual world to bring us back home, back to Godhead. Gaur Premanande Haribo. Let's hear a big welcome for everyone online. Come on. Haribo! There you go. We know you're out there, and we love you. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So we're continuing with our reading in the Srimad Bhagavatam. This morning, a slightly different program. Usually we chant the Brahma Samhita at this time, and then go into the Bhagavatam class. But today, we're having an extended planning session just after this class, starting at around 9 o'clock, I believe. Did we say 9? Yeah, 9 o'clock. Until we finish later this afternoon. We'll break for breakfast and lunch and everything like that. But we'll be making plans all morning for improving, increasing the Sankirtan part. Thank you. And therefore, we're going straight into the Bhagavatam class so that we can hear about the Lord blessing Sudhama Brahmana. We're on Canto 10, Chapter 81. The Lord blesses Sudhama Brahmana. And the text, I'm starting with 1 and 2. Shukadeva Goswami said, Lord Hari, Krishna, perfectly knows the hearts of all living beings, and he is especially devoted to the Brahmanas. While the Supreme Lord, the Lord of all saintly persons, conversed in this way with the best of the twice-born, he laughed and spoke the following words to that dear friend of his, the Brahmana Sudhama, all the while smiling and looking upon him with affection. Purport. Could you give me a book stand also? This is a big book. Purport. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, the words Sarva Bhuta Mayo Bhikna indicate that since Lord Krishna knows the minds of everyone, he could tell at once that his friend Sudhama had brought some flat rice for him and was ashamed to present it. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's further explanation of this verse, Lord Krishna smiled at this moment, thinking, yes, I am going to make you show what you brought for me. His smile then turned to laughter as he thought, how long are you going to keep this precious gift hidden in your cloth? Krishna glanced toward the bundle hidden inside his friend's garment, telling Sudhama by his loving glance, the veins showing through your emaciated skin and your ragged clothes astonish everyone present, but these symptoms of poverty will last only until tomorrow morning. Although Lord Krishna is Bhagavan, the supreme, independent Lord, he is always pleased to reciprocate with those who are priya, his cherished servants. As the indulgent patron of the Brahmana class, he especially enjoys favoring Brahmanas who are additionally qualified by unconditional devotion to him. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Dina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Dina Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Dadati Swa Vadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Text number 3. The Supreme Lord said, O Brahmana, what gift have you brought me from home? I regard as great even the smallest gift offered by my devotees in pure love. But even great offerings presented by non-devotees do not please me. Text 4. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. Isn't that amazing? Verse Krishna says it again right here. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachchati tadaham bhakti paritam ashnami pryatatmanaha. Purport. These famous words are also spoken by the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita 9:26. The translation and word meaning here are taken from Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. In the context of the current episode of Sudama's visit to Dwarka, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has kindly continued his explanation of Lord Krishna's statements. This verse is a reply to Sudama's anxiety that his bringing such an unfit offering was ill-considered. The use of the words bhaktya prayachati and bhaktyuparitam may seem redundant, since they both mean offered with devotion. But bhaktya can indicate how the Lord reciprocates the devotional mood of whoever offers him something with love. In other words, Lord Krishna here declares that his reciprocation in a pure loving exchange is not dependent on the external quality of what is offered. Krishna says something may or may not be impressive and pleasing in its own right, but when my devotee offers it to me in devotion with the expectation that I will enjoy it, it gives me great pleasure. In this regard, I make no discrimination. The verb ashnami, I eat, implies that Lord Krishna eats even a flower, which is supposed to be smelled, bewildered as he is by the ecstatic love he feels for his devotee. Someone might then question the Lord, so will you refuse an offering made to you by a devotee of some other deity? The Lord answers, yes, I will refuse to eat it. This the Lord states by the phrase priyatatmanaha, implying only by devotional service to me can one become pure in heart. Text number 5. Shukadeva Goswami continued, even after being addressed in this way, O king, the Brahmana felt too embarrassed to offer his palmfuls of flat rice to the husband of the goddess of fortune. He simply kept his head bowed in shame. Purport: according to Acharya Vishwanath Chakravarti, the description here of Krishna as the husband of the goddess of fortune implies that Sudhama questioned himself, how can the Lord of Shri eat this hard, stale rice? By bowing his head, the Brahmana revealed his meditation. My dear master, please do not make me ashamed. Even if you request it from me repeatedly, I will not give this to you. I have made up my mind. But the Lord countered with his own thought. The intention you had fixed in your mind while coming here must not be frustrated, for you are my devotee. Text 6 and 7. Being the direct witness in the hearts of all living beings, Lord Krishna fully understood why Sudama had come to see him. Thus he thought, in the past my friend has never worshipped me out of a desire for material opulence. But now he comes to me to satisfy his chaste and devoted wife. I will give him riches that even the immortal demigods cannot obtain. Purport: Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that the Lord momentarily wondered, how has it come about, despite my omniscience, that this devotee of mine has fallen into such poverty? Then quickly understanding the situation, he spoke to himself the words related in this verse. But someone may point out that Sudama could not have been so poverty-stricken, since appropriate enjoyment comes as a byproduct of service to God, even for a devotee who has no ulterior motives. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9:22. Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana pariyupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam bahamyaham. Gita. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. This is Bhagavad Gita 9:22. Before I continue, I'm going to read Prabhupada's purport, because this is such a sweet and important verse. Purport: one who is unable to live for a moment without Krishna consciousness cannot but think of Krishna 24 hours a day, being engaged in devotional service by hearing, chanting, remembering, offering prayers, worshiping, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, rendering other services, cultivating friendship, and surrendering fully to the Lord. Such activities are all auspicious and full of spiritual potencies, which make the devotee perfect in self-realization, so that his only desire is to achieve the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Wow. Such a devotee undoubtedly approaches the Lord without difficulty. This is called yoga. But by the mercy of the Lord, such a devotee never comes back to this material condition of life. Shema refers to the merciful protection of the Lord. The Lord helps the devotee to achieve Krishna consciousness by yoga. And when he becomes fully Krishna conscious, the Lord protects him from falling down to a miserable condition of life. Could live off this verse for the rest of our lives, right? Ananyas chintayantamam. Ananya, having no other object. I'll say that, and we can say it together. Ananya, having no other object. Chintayantaha, concentrating. Mam, on me. Ye, those who. Janaha, persons. Paripasate, properly worship. Tesham, of them. Nitya, always. Abhiyuktanam, fixed in devotion. Yoga, requirements. Shemam, protection. Vahami, carry. Aham, I. Can you grab me the Prabhupada's lecture on this from the Bhagavad Gita? but those who always worship me with exclusive devotion. So, ananyas chintayanto mam. With no other object. So, one's focus, one's consciousness is only fixed on the process of devotional service. This requires shraddha. As a definition, we hear in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Shraddha Shabde Bishwas Kohe Surida Nishchoy Krishne Bhakti Koila Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. Shraddha means the conviction that by performing devotional service and nothing else, then everything else is done. All other duties are done. All other karmas are performed naturally. We hear in the Bhagavatam from Karabhajana Muni, Devarshi Bhutatna Nrinam Pitranam Nakinkaro Nayam Rani Charajan Saravatmaraya Sharanam Sharanyam Guto Mukundam Prihritakartam, that we're debtors to the devas, to the rishis. Very much realizing now, the governor just declared a state of drought, severe drought, most severe drought in 100 years. And he said, we should take this as an opportunity to appreciate nature. You don't realize what you got till it's gone. And just thinking today, I just looking up in the sky and say, why doesn't it rain? And it's like, I take it for granted. The rain comes. I mean, I'm grateful when it does, but take it for granted it'll rain this time of year, but it just isn't. So there's all these higher beings who are providing all kinds of amenities to us on behalf of the Supreme Lord. And we owe for those. But one who's fully engaged in devotional service doesn't owe anybody anything, because he's fully paying his debt by watering the root of the tree. Everything else is satisfied because of that. Here's Prabhupada's comments on this verse, Ananyas Chintayantamam. Now Lord Krishna is speaking about his own devotees. So far he has spoken about the elevationists, material elevationists. Evam trai dharma manu prapana kata katam kama kama labante. Repeating the same process, sometimes going up, sometimes coming down. This is the material process. Today I am the richest man, and tomorrow I may be poverty-stricken man in the street. This is going on. As we find in this earth, so also by our previous activities we can be promoted in better planets. Then shinye punye martya lokam vishante. And when the resultant actions of pious activities is finished, then again we are driven to this earth, or down from further down than this earth. So this is going on. Lord Chaitanya said that E rupe brahmanda brahmete kon bhagyavan jeev. Everyone say, E rupe brahmanda brahmete kon bhagyavan jeev. This way, this cycle of different species of life, they're going on. So traveling in this way, somebody who is very fortunate by association of devotees, he gets the seed of devotional service. E rupe brahmanda brahmate kon bhagyavan jeev. To achieve the seed of devotional service is a fortunate achievement. It is not very easy, because it ceases the cycle of different transmigration of the soul. By ignorance, we take this spot life as permanent settlement, and we think that we shall live here permanently and make arrangement to live here permanently and make assets for my children, for my nation. Now Google set up a special department to defeat death, because they have trillions of dollars and they're making everything else. So now they have a special department to overcome death. I think someone should inform them about the real formula. Maybe they'll take it up. Chanting Hare Krishna. So everyone's thinking, I shall live here permanently, make arrangement to live here permanently and make assets for my children, for my nation. It's lunacy, actually. I read a book once on investing called Die Broke. And the guy says in the book, he said, why is everyone working so hard to save up assets to pass on to their children? They work their whole life to save these up, and then so their children can inherit. He said, spend everything while you're here, because otherwise, why are you working so hard? But we do not know that the cycle of transmigration is not fixed up. I do not know what next life is mine. So that's a profound statement. We don't know, Hare Krishna, We don't know that the cycle of transmigration is not fixed up, meaning that we don't know what's going to happen in the next life. Anything can happen. It's according to Daiva Naitrena. This is Prahlad Maharaj says that this transmigration is fixed up at the time of death by higher authority. Daiva, somebody else decides. And I heard Prabhupada the other day say that it's according to our service record. Just like in a company, you have a service record, and then you transfer that over to another company, and they'll look at it and say, oh, okay, you went to Stanford, and you did well on your thing. You were golden boy back in college and high school and so forth. And then they say, okay, And so he said every living entity has a service record. And so Daiva, that's looked at. And earlier in this chapter, we heard how Krishna knows the heart of every living entity also. There's no secret. So one who understands all these things, Ananyas Chintayantamam, dedicates his consciousness to Krishna. We have no other refuge. Samasrita ye padapalava plavam mahatpanam punya yasho mararehe. Krishna killed so many big demons, including the Murari demon, and therefore the devotees know that he's the only shelter in this world, and he's the source of the whole material manifestation and the person who's making it going on. Who would take shelter of anyone else? And Uddhava said, Aho bhakyam stanakalakutam. Who would take shelter of anyone else than Krishna, who's so merciful that his enemy came to kill him by smearing her breast with deadly poison, and he gave her the highest benediction. Why would you go to someone else for some benediction after hearing that? Uddhava says. So taking shelter of Krishna with all of one's consciousness, ananyash chintayantomam, the chintya, the consciousness, becomes absorbed in just these activities of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Bandhanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma, Nivedanam. These 9 processes of devotional service can be carried out 24 hours a day, and one's consciousness can be absorbed. And even if you have to go to work, which most of us do, then Krishna says in the Gita, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mama nusmara yudyacha mayarpita mano bhudir mami vaishyatya samshaya. At the same time that you're fighting with your boss, you should be thinking about Krishna. Because it's possible, especially if you chant Hare Krishna. You chant Hare Krishna as you're going throughout all the other activities of your life. You should think, I'm fighting this battle for Krishna. And Krishna will deliver us. Yoga Kshemam Bahamyaham means he personally takes a hand in our life and carries what we lack and preserves what we have. And that's a fact. So the richest person is someone who's not dependent on anything else or anyone else except for Krishna. This is actual freedom, happiness, and true wealth. Because when I'm dependent on others, then I have a vested interest, and I have to worry. Even the demigods were worried when Lord Nrsingadev was fighting with Prahlad Maharaj, because they were thinking, if Lord Nrsingadev loses, and Nrsingadev and Hiranyakashipu already saw us cheering on Lord Nrsingadev, because they had a vested interest. They have homes and power and all kinds of things to protect. But the pure devotees are never worried about anything because they don't have a vested interest. Their only desire is, let me continue with these 9 processes of devotional service, and that can go on anywhere. Narayana parak sarvena kutaschana bipyate swarga pavarga narakeshu apitulyana darshana. To them, it's equal, whether they're in heaven or hell, because they said, I just want to go on chanting and preaching and hearing about Krishna. And if that's our refuge, these 9 processes of devotional service, that nothing else is that important to me. I may have other duties to do, but I know my fallback position, that I'm fully satisfied by this hearing and chanting. Then there's nothing to worry about. Bhukti mukti siddhi kami sakaliya shanta. Krishna bhakta ataiva. What is it? Krishna bhakta nishkama ataiva shanta. Bhukti mukti siddhi kami sakaliya ashanta. So Chaitanya Charitamrita says that only the bhaktas are peaceful. Krishna bhakta nishkam, because they don't have any desire. That means no material desire. They have intense desire to serve Krishna. But that's not a material desire. That's a spiritual desire. And even if they have anxiety for that service, that's a spiritual anxiety. It doesn't register in the material world. It's like on a number line. There's negative numbers, and then there's 0, and then there's positive numbers. So the Nirvishesh Brahman is 0, but above that is actually rasa, which means relationship with Krishna, which is established through these 9 processes of devotional service. And when one's engaged in that, one's in the positive life of devotional service. And one can constantly think of Krishna, and there's no repercussion, no reaction from that on the material level. All one's activities are non-reactive. And one can continue that, expand that unlimitedly. There's no end to it. So as we were saying, as Prabhupada was saying, I do not know what next life is mine. I do not know who is coming as my son, who is coming, who is going out of the scene as my son. These laws we do not know, but we are chewing the chewed. Evam gata gatam kama kama labante. Under the spell of this illusory energy, we are captivated by this temporary sense gratification, and we have forgotten our real life. So those who are in the sense of their real constitutional position, as Bhagavad Gita started from the very beginning, this very conception that I am this body, beginning from beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, this is discredited, that you are not this body. So you have to mold your life in your identification of spiritual existence. So far, the materialist is concerned, they are chewing the chewed. Punak punas charvita charvananam. The example which I gave you last day, that as sugar cane, one has extracted all the juice by chewing, and it is again thrown on the earth, and somebody is chewing. So there is no juice. So we are simply repeating the same thing. We do not question whether this process of life can at all give us happiness, but we are trying the same thing. It's all been done and more. And what is the result? Are you all happy now that we got to hear that verse? Ananyas chintayantamam? You can live off that, right? That verse in purport, you can live off that forever. Text 6 and 7. Continuing in the purport. In response to this point, a distinction must be made between 2 kinds of renounced devotees. One kind is inimical to sense gratification, and the other is indifferent to it. The Supreme Lord does not force sense gratification upon the devotee who is extremely averse to worldly enjoyments. This is seen among such great renouncers as Jad Bharat. On the other hand, the Lord may give limitless wealth and power to a devotee who is neither repelled nor attracted by material things, such as Prahlad Maharaj. Up to this point in his life, Sudhama Brahmana was totally averse to sense gratification. But now, out of compassion for his faithful wife, and also because he hankered to have Krishna's audience, he went to beg from the Lord. Text 8. Thinking like this, the Lord snatched from the Brahmana's garment the grains of flat rice tied up in an old piece of cloth and exclaimed, "What is this? My friend, you have brought this for me? It gives me extreme pleasure. Indeed, these few grains of flat rice will satisfy not only me, but also the entire universe." Purport. Srila Prabhupada in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Quote, "It is understood from this statement that Krishna, being the original source of everything, is the root of the entire creation. As watering the root of a tree immediately distributes water to every part of the tree." Find that verse. It's in your shloka book. As watering the root of a tree immediately distributes water to every part of the tree, an offering made to Krishna or any action done for Krishna is to be considered the highest welfare work for everyone, because the benefit of such an offering is distributed throughout the creation. Love for Krishna becomes distributed to all living entities. Page. Look in your shloka books on page 219, please, for a unique life experience. a new life's experience. Let's look at this verse. A very important verse here. It's from Bhagavatam 4:31-14 on page 219. You'll see it at the top of the page. All say, please repeat. Yata toror mula nishechanena. Yata toror mula nishechanena. Tripyanti tatskanda bujopashaka. Tripyanti tatskanda bujopashaka. Prano paharach chayatendriyanam. Prano paharach chayatendriyanam. Tataiva sarvarhanam achyuteja. Tataiva sarvarhanam achyuteja. Translation: as pouring water on the root of a tree energizes the trunk, branches, twigs, and everything else, and as supplying food to the stomach enlivens the senses and limbs of the body, simply worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service automatically satisfies the demigods who are parts of that Supreme Personality. Another very important verse for understanding how it is that one can simply focus one's mind on Krishna and devotional service, and that everything else will come naturally. Isn't it? Okay. Text 10. After saying this, the Supreme Personality, the Supreme Lord, ate one palmful and was about to eat a second when the devoted goddess Rukmini took hold of his hand. Purport. Queen Rukmini took hold of Krishna's hand to prevent him from eating any more of the flat rice. According to Sridhar Swami, with this gesture she meant to tell the Lord, this much of your grace is sufficient to assure anyone vast riches, which are merely the play of my glance. But please do not force me to surrender myself to this Brahmana, as will happen if you eat one more handful. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti explains that by taking hold of the Lord's hand, Rukmini implied, if you eat all this wonderful treat your friend brought from his house, what will I have left for my friends, co-wives, servants, and myself? There will not be enough left to distribute even one grain to each of us. And to her maidservant companion, she said by her gesture, this hard rice will upset my Lord's tender stomach. Srila Prabhupada comments that when food is offered to Lord Krishna with love and devotion, and he is pleased and accepts it from the devotee, Rukmini Devi, the goddess of fortune, becomes so greatly obliged to the devotee that she has to personally go to the devotee's home to turn it into the most opulent home in the world. If one feeds Narayan sumptuously, the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, automatically becomes a guest in one's house, which means that one's home becomes opulent. Text 11. Queen Rukmini said, this is more than enough, O soul of the universe, to secure him an abundance of all kinds of wealth in his world and the next, in this world and the next. After all, one's prosperity depends simply on your satisfaction. Pumsas twat tosha karanam. Pumsa, for a person, twat, your tosha, satisfaction, karanam, having has its cause. Text 12, Shukadeva Goswami continued, the Brahmana spent that night in Lord Achyuta's palace after eating and drinking to his full satisfaction. He felt as if he had gone to the spiritual world. The next day, Sudhama set off for home while being honored by Lord Krishna, the self-satisfied maintainer of the universe. The Brahmana felt greatly delighted, my dear king, as he walked along the road. Purport, we are here reminded that Lord Krishna maintains the supply of desirable objects for the whole universe. Therefore, it is to be understood that he was about to manifest for Sudama opulence greater than Indra's, being swasuka, perfectly complete in his own bliss, swasuka. The Lord has an unlimited capacity for bestowing gifts. Isn't that nice? According to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the word Abhivanditaha indicates that Sri Krishna accompanied Sudama on the road for a short distance and finally parted with the Brahmana after bowing down to him and speaking some respectful words. So Lord Chaitanya took sannyas and then he went off with his associates, and he asked them as they left to wander, "Did you bring anything with you?" And they said, "No, my Lord, you didn't instruct us to bring anything." He said, "Very good, because we will simply depend on Krishna." He said, "The Lord has filled up the universe with food and money, but one can get only according to what is destined to him." Isn't that true? Silicon Valley is filled up with food and money. But Google has most of it. And you can get only according to what's in your destiny. And then he said, sometimes a king, every day he eats a royal feast. But some days he becomes angry at someone. And then he vows, "I will not eat today." And therefore he has to fast. That's his karma, that he can't eat that day. And another day, the royal feast is served, and then he gets a high fever and he can't eat. So he said, in this way, no matter what situation one's in, whatever arrangement one makes, one can get only what one's destined to get by material nature. And tasyaiva heta prayate kovido. Tasyaiva heto prayate kovido na labhyate yad brahmatam uparyadad. What is it? Tad. Anyway, it's coming. Verse is coming as of 1st Canto, 5th chapter. And here Narada Muni says that one should not... Thank you very much. Talabhyate dukhavadanyata sukham, page 172 in your shloka book. You can have a look at this beautiful verse. Just take a look at it. Observe this verse and see the beauty of it. Tasyaiva heto prayate kovido nalabhyate yad brahmatam uparyadaha talabhyate dukhavananyata sukham kalena sarvatra gabhira ramasa. I'll say, please repeat. Tasyaiva heto prayate kovido nalabhyate yad brahmatam uparyadaha talabhyate dukhavadanyata sukham kalena sarvatra gabhira ramasa. Translation is, persons who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined should endeavor only for that purposeful end, which is not obtainable even by wandering from the topmost planet Brahmaloka down to the lowest planet Patala. As far as happiness derived from sense enjoyment is concerned, it can be obtained automatically in course of time, just as in course of time we obtain miseries, even though we do not desire them. And now we have the great pleasure of hearing Srila Prabhupada's purport to this verse. Imagine where he was sitting at the time, just how Prabhupada would wake up in the middle of the night, 12 o'clock midnight, and then he'd begin translating. So he's there, he's speaking what he heard from his spiritual master, what he realized, and he's putting it into a dictaphone that's being transferred onto the page. And now we have this direct association with Prabhupada through his Vani. Acharya Vani we have just by hearing. So this is his purport, spoken directly to us by him. And he spoke it for us, just so we could hear this. Here's the purport. Every man everywhere is trying to obtain the greatest amount of sense enjoyment by various endeavors. Again, every man everywhere is trying to obtain the greatest amount of sense enjoyment by various endeavors. That's a good opening line to presenting a book. Every man everywhere is trying to obtain the greatest amount of sense enjoyment by various endeavors. Some men are busy engaged in trade, industry, economic development, political supremacy, etc., and some of them are engaged in fruitive work to become happy in the next life by attaining higher planets. It is said that on the moon the inhabitants are fit for greater sense enjoyment by drinking somaras, and the Pitrilok is obtained by good charitable work. So there are various programs for sense enjoyment, either during this life or in the life after death. Some are trying to reach the moon and other planets by some mechanical arrangement, for they are very anxious to get into such planets without doing good work. But this is not to happen. By the law of the Supreme, different places are meant for different grades of living beings according to the work they have performed. By good work only, as prescribed in the scriptures, can one obtain birth in a good family, opulence, good education, and good bodily features. We see also that even in this life, if one obtains a good education or money by good work, similarly, we see also in this life, one obtains a good education or money by good work. Similarly, in our next birth, we get such desirable positions only by good work. Otherwise, it would not so happen that two persons born in the same place at the same time are seen differently placed according to previous work. But all such material positions are impermanent. The positions in the topmost Brahmaloka and in the lowest Patala are also changeable according to our own work. The philosophically inclined person must not be tempted by such changeable positions. He should try to get into the permanent life of bliss and knowledge, where he will not be forced to come back again to the miserable material world, either in this or that planet. Miseries and mixed happiness are two features of material life, and they are obtained in Brahmalok and in other lokas also. Miseries and mixed happiness. Which is worse? I'm not sure. They are obtained in the life of the demigods and are also in the life of dogs and hogs. The miseries and mixed happiness of all living beings are only of different degree and quality, but no one is free from the miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease. Similarly, everyone has his destined happiness also. No one can get more or less of these things simply by personal endeavors. No one can get more or less of these things simply by personal endeavors. Just relax then. Even if they are obtained, they can be lost again. One should not, therefore, waste time with these flimsy things. One should only endeavor to go back to Godhead. That should be the mission of everyone's life. All right, it's settled. Okay? It's over. Finished. Nothing to see here. Moving on. Okay. So we've got some great verses coming out this morning, right? What are some of them so far? Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana pariyupashate tesham nityabdi yuktanam yogakshemam bahamyaham. That one we can live in the purport there. We could read over and over again. And then we had Yatatoror mula nashechatena tripyanti tatskanda bujo pashaka prahanarach shot. What is it? Yatendriyanam sarvarhanam something achuteja. So that one we have in what else? Tasyaiva heto prayateta kovido nalabyate tad brahmadam uparyata talabyate dukavadanyata sukham sarvatra gabiraram hasa. So devarshi bhutap nandrinam pitrinam, etc. So many of these verses. Good to collect these verses and review them over and over and over again because they're speaking to us directly. And as earlier we heard in the purport to Ananyas Chintayantamam, Prabhupada said something very powerful. He said all of these processes, especially the hearing and chanting and the 9 processes of devotional service, he said they're full of spiritual potencies. That means by engaging in them even before we have a taste, we'll gain a taste, we'll also gain strength in Krishna consciousness. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayat Yashavairagnyam Jnanam Chayara Haitukam. By engaging in this direct process of devotional service, the 9 activities of devotional service, one, as a concomitant, gets knowledge and detachment from the world. What to speak of the ingress of the Swarup Shakti, the internal potency. It enters into one's heart, and it awakens one's relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then one has dual citizenship. One may be living in this world, working anywhere, Google even, and at the same time be engaged in rasa with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this comes about by the potencies that are inherent in the process of devotional service. And by hearing and chanting about Krishna, one is absorbed in thoughts of him, ananyas chintayantamam. And by serving his mission, by serving Lord Chaitanya's mission, thinking how to spread Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission all over the world, this absorbs the mind in the internal energy, because it's the Lord's direct order. Jari tako tahe kaha Krishnu badesh amaragnaya guru hanatare desh. He was very assertive that everyone should take up this mission and preach it to others. So spreading the Sankirtan movement is an aspect of the internal energy of the Lord, and one can absorb one's mind in that. So there's no difficulty in connecting to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and one who does that throughout this lifetime will find him or herself infused with these spiritual potencies. And also it'll be startling, actually, how potent the process of chanting and hearing is. Startling. The devotee becomes startled with how much the Lord blesses one's life, one who gives him or herself to the process of devotional service. And Krishna is so easily pleased. If one simply offers with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, he'll eat it. He'll take it if you're offering it out of love. Such a simple, direct process. Continuing with Sudhama Brahmana. The next day, Sudhama set off for home. We read that. 14. Although he had apparently received no wealth from Lord Krishna, Sudhama was too shy to beg for it on his own. He simply returned home feeling perfectly satisfied to have had the Supreme Lord's audience. Sudhama thought, Lord Krishna is known to be devoted to the Brahmanas, and now I have personally seen this devotion. Indeed, he who carries the goddess of fortune on his chest has embraced the poorest beggar. Who am I, a sinful poor friend of a Brahmana? And who is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, full in 6 opulences? Nonetheless, he has embraced me with his 2 arms. We'll repeat this verse because it's a famous verse, which is beloved of all the devotees, and it's also quoted in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. All say, please repeat. Kwaham daridra papiyan. Kwa Krishna Sriniketanaha. Brahma Bandur iti smaham. Bahubhyam parirambitaha. Purport. This translation is from Srila Prabhupada's English rendering of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 7.143. Sudhama was so humble that he considered his poverty to be his own fault as a result of sin. Such a mentality is in accord with the saying, Daridra dosha guna rashi nashi. I'll say, please repeat. Daridra dosho guna rashi nashi. The discrepancy of being poor ruins heaps of good qualities. The discrepancy of being poor ruins heaps of good qualities. Guna rashi nashi. It ruins all your good qualities if you're poor. Okay, don't be poor. 16, 143. Look at this, the purport to the verse mentioned in the Madhya Lila. Here's the translation. He said, who am I, a sinful poor friend of a Brahmana, and who is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, full in 6 opulences? Nevertheless, he has embraced me with his 2 arms. Now I want you to listen carefully to the purport. Are you ready?
Yes.
Purport. This verse was spoken by Sudhama Brahmana in Srimad Bhagavatam 10, 18, 16 in connection with his meeting Lord Krishna. That's it. So it's important to see how it interlocked the Bhagavatam and the Chaitanya Charitamrita are. Because the Chaitanya Charitamrita is a string of a beautiful garland of the verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam with full realization about their enactment by the Lord Chaitanya and all his followers. This is an important verse. Okay, 17. He treated me just like one of his brothers, making me sit on the bed of his beloved consort. And because I was fatigued, his queen personally fanned me with a yak-tail chamra. Although he is the Lord of all demigods and the object of worship for all brahmanas, he worshipped me as if I were a demigod myself, massaging my feet and rendering other humble services. Devotional service to his lotus feet is the root cause of all the perfections a person can find in heaven, in liberation, in the subterranean regions, and on the earth. All say the Sanskrit, please repeat. Swarga pavarga yo pumsam rasayam puvi sampadam sarvasam apisidhanam mulam touch Charanarcharam. Swarga of heaven, Apavargayaho, and of ultimate liberation. Pungsam, for all men. Rasayam, in the subterranean regions. Puvi, and on the earth. Sampadam, of opulences. Sarvasam, all. Api, also. Siddhinam, of mystic perfections. Mulam, the root cause. Tat, his. Charana, of the feet. Archanam, the worship. Okay, here's the translation. Devotional service to his lotus feet is the root cause of all the perfection a person can find in heaven, in liberation, in the subterranean regions on the earth. Good, right? Yashoda Kumar likes it. Text 20. Thinking, if this poor wretch suddenly becomes rich, he will forget me in his intoxicating happiness. The compassionate Lord did not grant me even a little wealth. Purport. Sudama's statement that Lord Krishna bestowed on him not even a little wealth may also be taken to mean that instead of giving him wealth that was abhuri, slight, the Lord in fact gave him the immense treasure of his association. This alternative meaning has been suggested by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. 21 through 23. Shukadeva Goswami continued, thinking thus to himself, Sudama finally came to the place where his home stood. But that place was now crowded on all sides with towering celestial palaces rivaling the combined brilliance of the sun, fire, and the moon. There were splendorous courtyards and gardens, each filled with flocks of cooing birds and beautified by ponds in which Kumuda, Amboja, Kalhara, and Utpal lotuses grew. Finely attired men and doe-eyed women stood in attendance. Sudama wondered, what is all this? Whose property is this? How has this all come about? Purport. Srila Sridhar Swami gives the sequence of the Brahmana's thoughts. First, seeing a great unfamiliar effulgence, he thought, what is this? Then noting the palaces, he asked himself, whose palace is this? And recognizing it as his own, he wondered, how has it become so transformed? 24. As he continued to ponder in this way, the beautiful men and maidservants as effulgent as demigods came forward to greet their greatly fortunate master with loud song and instrumental music. Purport. As explained by Acharya Vishwanath Chakravarti, the word pratyagranan, they acknowledged in turn, indicates that first Sudama accepted the servants within his mind, deciding, my Lord must want me to have them. And in response to the visible change in his attitude, they approached him as their master. Vittel likes that one. Translation. When she heard that her husband had arrived, the Brahmana's wife quickly came out of the house in a jubilant flurry. She resembled the goddess of fortune herself, emerging from her divine abode. Purport. Srila Sridhar Swami points out that since Lord Krishna had turned Sudama's house into a heavenly abode, everyone living there now possessed beautiful bodies and attire appropriate to the residents of heaven. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur adds this insight. The night before, Sudama's poor emaciated wife had been sleeping in rags under a crumbling roof. When she woke in the morning, she found herself and her house wonderfully changed. Only for a moment was she confused. She then realized that this opulence was the Lord's gift to her husband, who must be on his way home. Thus, she prepared to greet him. 26. When the chaste lady saw her husband, her eyes filled with tears of love and eagerness. As she held her eyes closed, she solemnly bowed down to him, and in her heart she embraced him. Sudama was amazed to see his wife, shining forth in the midst of maidservants adorned with jeweled lockets. She looked as effulgent as a demigoddess in her celestial airplane. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that up till now, the Supreme Lord had kept the Brahmana in his wretched state so that his wife could recognize him. Text 28. With pleasure he took his wife with him and entered his home, where there were hundreds of gem-studded pillars, just as in the palace of Lord Mahendra. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti comments that Sudama was simply astonished at the sight of his wife, as he wondered, who is this demigod's wife, who has approached such a fallen soul as me? The maidservants informed him, this is indeed your wife. At that very moment, Sudama's body became young and beautiful, bedecked in fine clothing and jewelry. The word pritaha here indicates that these changes gave him considerable pleasure. The famous 1,000 names of Vishnu hymn of the Mahabharata immortalizes Sudama's sudden opulence in the following phrase. Sridama Ranka Bhaktrartha Bhumyanti Tendra Vaibhavaha. Did you all know that? Lord Vishnu is also known as he who brought Indra's opulence to this earth for the benefit of his pitiful devotee Sudama. Sudama. What a nice verse, huh? Sridama Ranka Bhaktartha Bhumyanti Tendra Vaibhavaha. The Lord Vishnu is also known as he who brought Indra's opulence to this earth for the benefit of his pitiful devotee Sudama. Good, huh? We should chant the Vishnu Sahasranam now, just to get to that part. Does anybody here know it through the whole thing? Chittahari, no?
We chanted Fremont Temple. They chanted Fremont Temple.
Yeah?
It's difficult to memorize everything, but it's if you get used to it, you can chant it.
Oh. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. In Sudama's home were beds as soft and white as the foam of milk, with bedsteads made of ivory and ornamented with gold. There were also couches with golden legs, as well as royal chamra fans, golden thrones, soft cushions, and gleaming canopies hung with strings of pearls. Upon the walls of sparkling crystal glass, inlaid with precious emeralds, shone jeweled lamps, and the women in the palace were all adorned with precious gems. As he viewed this luxurious opulence of all varieties, the Brahmana calmly reasoned to himself about his unexpected prosperity. Sudama thought, I have always been poor. Certainly the only possible way that such an unfortunate person as myself could become suddenly rich is that Lord Krishna, the supremely opulent chief of the Yadu dynasty, has glanced upon me. After all, my friend Krishna, the most exalted of the Dasharhas, has an enjoyer of unlimited wealth, noticed that I secretly intended to beg from him. Thus, even though he said nothing about it when I stood before him, he actually bestowed upon me the most abundant riches. In this way, he acted just like a merciful rain cloud. Purport: Sri Krishna is Bhuri Bhoja, the unlimited enjoyer. Bhuri Bhoja. Nice, huh? He did not tell Sudama how he was going to fulfill his unspoken request, because according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, he was thinking at the time, my dear friend has given me these grains of rice, which are greater than all the treasures I own. Even though in his own house he had no such gift to bring me, he took the trouble of begging it from a neighbor. Therefore, it is only proper that I give him something more valuable than all my possessions. But nothing is equal to or greater than what I possess. So all I can do is give him such meager things as the treasures of Indra, Brahma, and other demigods. Embarrassed at being unable to properly reciprocate his devotee's offering, Lord Krishna bestowed his favor on the Brahmins silently. The Lord acted just like a magnanimous rain cloud, which provides the necessities of life for everyone near and far, but feels ashamed that its rain is too insignificant a gift to give in return for the abundant offerings that farmers make to it. Out of shame, the clouds may wait until nighttime, when the farmers are asleep, before watering their fields. Hey, look, Haladar Rupa is here. Haladar Rupa ki! Jai! Welcome home, Haladar. Haribol. Come on, a big Haribol. We've been holding our breath till you got back. We're so happy to see you.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Thanks for all, and sorry for all the trouble you had to go to. Come back. This world is Durga, difficult to go. It's difficult to go, difficult to stay, difficult to do anything here. And Krishna knows it too. He says in the Bhagavad Gita, Daiva hiyesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mameva ye prapadyante maya metam tarantite. It's duratyaya. It's a very difficult place to live. But we have to make the best use of a bad bargain. And the best use of the bad bargain is ananyas chintayantamam. Simply absorb one's consciousness in the 9 processes of devotional service and serve Krishna and spread Lord Chaitanya's movement. You do that, no problem. This is nice, isn't it? The Lord considers even his greatest benedictions to be insignificant, while he magnifies even a small service rendered to him by his well-wishing devotee. Thus, with pleasure, the Supreme Soul accepted a single palmful of the flat rice I brought him. The Lord is the supremely compassionate reservoir of all transcendental qualities. Life after life, may I serve him with love, friendship, and sympathy. And may I cultivate such firm attachment for him by the precious association of his devotees. Purport: as explained by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, Sauridam here signifies affection toward him, who is so compassionate to his devotees. Sakyam is affinity manifested in the desire to live in his company. Maitri is the attitude of intimate comradeship, and Dasyam is the urge to do service. All these urges awaken through the process of hearing, chanting, associating with advanced devotees. Naturally, when one comes in contact with the Lord's internal potency through association with advanced devotees, which is where the internal potency appears in this material world, especially Bhavadvida Bhagavatas Tirtha Bhuta Swayam Vibho Tirtha Kurvanti Tirtani Swantakstena Gadabrata. Yudhishthir told Vidura that you're verily a holy place personified, because you carry the personality of God within your heart. Wherever you go, you purify even the holy places just by your presence there. So by association with advanced devotees who actually carry that love for Krishna, the internal potency within my heart, then we can awaken and be infused with that same mood of devotion. And by watering the seed of devotion in our heart, through Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. Okay, so Shravanam means hearing. Kirtanam, Smaranam, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam. Padasevanam means? What does that mean? How do you do that? So you serving the Lord's lotus feet. What else? Go in holy places. When you go serve the Dham, you can walk around Govardhan. Yashoda. What is it? Following instruction of the Lord is Padasevanam. Padasevanam dasyam.
Dasyam is to be a servant.
Become a servant. Sakyam. I forgot Vandanam. Archanam. Archanam is so nice. It's practical. You collect all the paraphernalia. You get flowers. What else can you collect to offer to the Lord? The nicest scents you can offer to the Lord. What kind of scents can you offer to Krishna? Sandalwood's nice. It's hard to get because the planet's so depleted right now. All the sandalwood, they barely give you any. And it's hard not to get cheated. But you can get good sandalwood offered to the Lord. What else can you get? What other scents? Kus is nice. Do we have any? Do we have kus? Kus? It's green and thick. You can buy it in India. It's a really nice oil to offer to the Lord. I like it too much. And then there's incense, and there's flowers. What kind of flowers should we offer to the Lord?
Sweet smelling.
Scented flowers, not flowers with no scent. It's an offense to offer a flower to the Lord with no scent. Right, Yashoda? Yeah, and then what's worse is offering a flower with no scent and then taking it around to every single devotee in the assembly and say, here. And it's like, there's nothing there. Offer a flower with scent, otherwise don't offer it. What else can you offer to the Lord? Jewelry. You can get jewelry from everywhere. What else? What did Advaita Acharya offer to the Lord? And what else? Yeah, and Prabhupada says in that section of Advaita Acharya, he said you should collect water from a pure source. Ganges, Jamuna, and if you're not near those rivers, you should get from a very pure source. It should be nice, purified water offered to the Lord. But just offering Ganges water and Tulsi leaf, and if you don't have Ganges water, you can turn it into Ganges water with a little mantra. Yashoda, give us the mantra. Yeah, just by calling the rivers, they come all in, and then you can offer with Tulsi leaves. And then the Lord sells himself to the devotee who offers a little palmful of Ganges water and some Tulsi leaves. That's how Advaita Acharya got Lord Chaitanya to come down. He read it, he remembered in the Shastra that there was this verse that says, the Lord sells himself to a devotee. And we know that's true from this verse now, right? Sudhama didn't even want to offer anything because he was too ashamed of it, and he borrowed it from a neighbor, and he tried to hide it, and the Lord took a couple palmfuls, and that was it. And then he said, whatever I give is insignificant compared to this. That's how grateful Krishna is for a little offering given in love. So this Archanam is so nice, collecting, for somebody who's engaged in Archanam, everywhere they go, they're always looking for nice things for Krishna. In fact, you can even go shopping. Anybody like to shop? Well, if you're engaged in Archanam, you can actually shop in such a way that you're not over-collecting or being, absorbed by Maya in some way. Because you just go around shopping and you're always looking for nice things that you can pick up for the Lord. What are some things you can find when you go shopping? You can find clothes, you can find nice cloth, right?
Nice beads.
What? Ornaments. Jewelry. I was at a dollar shop in Japan. Actually, the guy who started those hyaku yen, which means hyaku yen, and hyaku yen is $1 approximately. And hyaku yen shops, everything $1. And I found something, I didn't even know what it is, but I've had it for about 10 years now. It's this little screen. I don't know what else you'd use it for, but a shnan for my deities when I travel. A little bathing thing. It's got a little wire thing, and I think it was made just for that. I've never seen another one again. It cost me $1, use it for 10 years. But otherwise, hyaku-en shops, you just collect all this stuff, and then you throw it away 5 years later. But anywhere you go, if you're engaged in Archanam, you can be looking for nice things that you can use in the Lord's service. And then Sakyam, befriending the Lord, Atma Nivedanam. Surrendering everything, surrendering oneself. Okay. The Lord is the supremely compassionate reservoir of all transcendental qualities. Life after life may I serve him with love, friendship, and sympathy, and may I cultivate such firm attachment for him by the precious association of his devotees. 37. To a devotee who lacks a spiritual insight, the Supreme Lord will not grant the wonderful opulences of this world, kingly power, and material assets. Indeed, in his infinite wisdom, the unborn Lord well knows how the intoxication of pride can cause the downfall of the wealthy. Purport, as explained by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, the humble Brahmana, Sudhama, considered himself unworthy of the Supreme Lord's most rare and valuable benediction, pure devotional service. He reasoned that if he had any true devotion, the Lord would have granted him perfect, unflinching devotion rather than the material riches and servants he had received. Lord Krishna would have protected a more serious devotee by denying him such distractions. The Lord will give a sincere but less intelligent devotee not as much material wealth as he desires, but only what will promote his devotional progress. Everyone's smiling. Sudhama thought a great saint like Prahlad Maharaj can avoid becoming contaminated by immeasurable wealth, power, and fame. But I must always be wary of temptation in my new situation. We may understand that this humble attitude assured Sudhama Vipra final success in his execution of Bhakti Yoga by the standard process of hearing and repeating the glories of Lord Krishna. Text 38. Shukadeva Goswami continued, thus firmly fixing his determination by means of his spiritual intelligence, Sudhama remained absolutely devoted to Lord Krishna, the shelter of all living beings. Free from avarice, he enjoyed, together with his wife, the sense pleasures that had been bestowed upon him, always with the idea of eventually renouncing all sense gratification. Lord Hari is the God of all gods, the master of all sacrifices, and the supreme ruler. But he accepts the saintly Brahmanas as his masters, and so there exists no deity higher than them. Purport, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti points out that even though Sri Krishna is the supreme ruler of creation, he accepts the Brahmanas as his masters, even though he is the God of all gods. The Brahmanas are his deities, and even though he is the Lord of all sacrifices, he performs sacrifices to worship them. 40. Thus seeing how the unconquerable Supreme Lord is nonetheless conquered by his own servants, the Lord's dear Brahmana friend felt the remaining knots of material attachment within his heart being cut by the force of his constant meditation on the Lord. In a short time he attained Lord Krishna's supreme abode, the destination of great saints. Purport, Sudhama's earthly fortune has been described, and now Shukadeva Goswami describes the treasure the Brahman enjoyed in the next world. Shri Jiva Goswami mentions that Sudhama's last trace of illusion lay in the subtle pride of being a renounced Brahmana. This trace was also destroyed by his contemplating the Supreme Lord's submission to his devotees. 41. The Lord always shows Brahmanas a special favor. Anyone who hears this account of the Supreme Lord's kindness to Brahmanas will come to develop love for the Lord and thus become free from the bondage of material work. Purport. In the introduction to the chapter of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that describes this pastime, His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada comments, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the super soul of all living entities, knows very well everyone's heart. He is especially inclined to the Brahmana devotees. Lord Krishna is also called Brahmanya Deva, which means that he is worshipped by the Brahmanas. Therefore, it is understood that a devotee who is fully surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead has already acquired the position of a Brahmana. Without becoming a Brahmana, one cannot approach the Supreme Brahman, Lord Krishna. Krishna is especially concerned with vanquishing the distress of his devotees, and he is the only shelter of the devotees. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada to the 10th canto, 81st chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, titled The Lord blesses Sudhama Brahmana. Hare Krishna. What a nice yajna, huh? Okay, so any reflections? We'll hear some reflections.
It was very wonderful to see the point that Lord was ashamed to give this in return to Sudhama because he couldn't match what Sudhama gave.
Yeah. I know. We all felt a visceral reaction to that almost, right? When we heard that. It's amazing. Mayapur and then Chittahari.
Prabhuji, in the purport for 37th verse, there said the last part that Sudhama was able to perfect the life because of humility. Perfect his bhakti because of his humility. He never thought he got all this because he deserved it, things like that.
Yes. And this is an important point. Can you grab me Vasudev, the leper? Vasudev the leper was a great devotee. And he was so humble that although he had living worms on his body, some kind of skin disease, that when they would fall off, he would pick them back up again and put them back on his skin because he didn't want to deprive them. And he heard that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was visiting at Kurmakshetra. And when he heard that, he hurried to the spot to meet Lord Chaitanya, but he just missed him by a short margin. Back then, there was no cell phones. Where it's like, could you come back? And it's amazing that we all lived, I don't know if any of you did, but many of us lived through an era where we didn't have cell phones or GPS or anything like that. But interestingly, in that story, Lord Chaitanya knew within his heart that his devotee had arrived, and he turned around and came back. And when he came back, he embraced the Brahmin leper, Vasudev, and Vasudev's body then became very beautiful. And then he was worried about, how will I remain humble? How will I be able to carry on my devotional service with this new situation in life? Thus, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would remain at night in one place, and the next morning after bathing, he would start the next. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left, the Brahmin Kurma followed him at great distance, but eventually Lord Chaitanya took care to send him back home. There was also a Brahmin named Vasudev, who was a great person, but was suffering from leprosy. Indeed, his body was filled with living worms. Although suffering from leprosy, the Brahmin Vasudev was enlightened. As soon as one worm fell from his body, he would pick it up and place it back again in the same location. Then one night, Vasudev heard of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's arrival, and in the morning he came to see the Lord at the house of Kurma. When the leper Vasudev came to Kurma's house to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was informed that the Lord had already left. The leper then fell to the ground unconscious. When Vasudev the leper Brahmin was lamenting due to not being able to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Lord immediately returned to that spot and embraced him. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu touched him, both the leprosy and his distress went to a distant place. Indeed, Vasudev's body became very beautiful to his great happiness. The Brahmin Vasudev was astonished to behold the wonderful mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he began to recite a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam touching the lotus feet, the Lord's lotus feet. Kwaham daridra papiyam, kwa Krishna Sri Niketanaha, Brahma Bandhuriti Smaham, Bahubhyam Parirambitaha. He said, who am I, a sinful poor friend of a Brahmana, and who is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, full in six opulences? Nonetheless, he has embraced me with his two arms. This verse was spoken by Sudhama Brahmana in Srimad Bhagavatam 1081:16 in connection with his meeting Lord Krishna. 144, 145. The Brahman Vasudeva continued, O my merciful Lord, such mercy is not possible for ordinary living entities. Such mercy can be found only in you. Upon seeing me, even a sinful person goes away due to my bad bodily odor. Yet you have touched me. Such is the independent behavior of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Being meek and humble, the Brahmana Vasudeva worried that he would become proud after being cured by the grace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. To protect the Brahmana, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised him to chant the Hare Krishna mantra incessantly. By doing so, he would never become unnecessarily proud. Prabhu kahe, kabu tomar na habe abhiman. Nirantara kaha tumi Krishna Krishna nam. I'll say, please repeat. Prabhu kahe kabu tomar na habe abhiman. Nirantara kaha tumi Krishna Krishna nam. Krishna Krishna nam. Krishna Krishna nam. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. So you should tell people, Nirantara kaha tumi, Krishna Krishna nam. Incessantly go on chanting Krishna nam. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also advised Vasudeva to preach about Krishna and thus liberate living entities. As a result, Krishna would very soon accept him as his devotee. What a perfect segue into our Sankirtan meeting. Can you believe this? So he told him two things, and this is simple. Incessantly chant Hare Krishna. And it's coming right from Lord Chaitanya's mouth. Prabhu kahe. So Prabhu said, just incessantly chant Hare Krishna. And the other thing is preach. Chant and preach. That's it. It's a simple movement. And by these two methods, he says, Krishna would soon accept him as his devotee and he would stay humble. Purport. Although Vasudeva Vipra was a leper and had suffered greatly, still after Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu cured him, he instructed him to preach Krishna consciousness. Indeed, the only return the Lord wanted was that Vasudeva preach the instructions of Krishna and liberate all human beings. That is the process of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Each and every member of this society was rescued from a very abominable condition, but now they are engaged in preaching the cult of Krishna consciousness. They are not only cured of the disease called materialism, but are also living a very happy life. Everyone accepts them as great devotees of Krishna, and their qualities are manifest in their very faces. If one wants to be recognized as a devotee by Krishna, he should take to preaching work, following the advice of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then one will undoubtedly attain the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya, Lord Krishna himself, without delay. Go Premanande! That makes a lot of sense, because chanting Hare Krishna directly connects one to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and preaching makes one a friend of the Lord. He accepts such a person very quickly. One of my godbrothers, Guru Kripa Prabhu, told me that when he joined the movement in San Francisco, 1970, and then he heard Prabhupada was in India and needed help. So he asked if he could go to India, and everyone said no. And he said, I'm going anyway. So he had to collect his own ticket, which at that time meant go on the street and collect. So he collected a ticket, he went to India, and then Prabhupada was very much available. Unlike in America, he was always moving, busy, and surrounded by an entourage and stuff. It's hard to get close unless you were, one of the big leaders. But in India, Prabhupada is a completely different mood. People can walk in his room and just sit down, talk, go to darshans a couple times a day. So he told me that he went there, and Haribol Dimitri, Hare Krishna. He went there he'd go there to all the darshans and he'd sit down, and he said Prabhupada didn't even look at him. He didn't pay attention to him, didn't talk to him. He talked to others, but he didn't pay any attention to him. And after a couple of months like that, then he got an opportunity, did Guru Kripa, to go down south. He went to Coimbatore and a few other places in the south, some first delegation of devotees to go down there and preach. And they made a big splash because they were, these Western devotees going down there and chanting Hare Krishna, and they knew some stuff. They were preaching from Sri Upanishad and all these other things, and people were just, it's the first time anybody heard Hare Krishna, So it was a big deal. It got in the paper, a very favorable article, and then Prabhupada read that, and he said as soon as he came back from that, Prabhupada started talking to him and looking and recognized him. And he realized how it worked, that, the more service he did, the more he was recognized. So the same thing, our service record is important, how we're rendering service. We may, you don't have to advertise yourself, but if you do humble, steady service, Krishna will bring it out to the world. And he'll also see it himself very quickly. In the story at Srivasangam, when all the devotees were bathing Lord Chaitanya, there was one maidservant, house servant of Srivas Thakur, who was taking great care to bring these pots of Ganges water and line them up very nicely for all the devotees to use in their seva. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, out of the crowd of devotees, picked out this one maidservant and said, "Who is this?" And they said, yeah, she's the housemaid. Her name's Duki. And Mahaprabhu said, "Now her name is Duki." He recognized her, and the devotees became very happy. So this rendering of service, especially preaching work, it is compared by Prabhupada to the farm boy who grows up in obscurity in middle America. He'll never actually go to a big school, he'll never amount to, and no one will ever hear of him. But then the military comes calling, and they said, "There's a war going on, could you join?" So he joins this service, he enlists. And of course he's in an infantry, which are the first people to get killed. So they're expendable. He gets put on the front lines, but he performs a heroic act. In his heroism, he saves somebody, and then everyone finds out, and the next day he becomes a national hero. And he comes home to a big ticker tape parade, and everyone recognizes him. And now, this person who is going to live in obscurity his whole life now becomes famous all over the world. So Prabhupada said in the same way, he was writing to the devotees who were going out and preaching, and at the time, around that 1974 or 5, it was a kind of a war going out to preach Krishna consciousness, because we're very new. People thought a lot of weird things about us, and there were a lot of battles that we underwent. There were devotees who got arrested over and over again. I have an arrest record, I'm proud to say, for the cause of freedom, and many other. There were all kinds of these things, and Prabhupada recognized it. He said, "You're giving your life for this, and Krishna will recognize you." So here Prabhupada says, and I repeat, that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also advised Vasudeva to preach about Krishna and thus liberate living entities. As a result, Krishna would very soon accept him as his devotee. So we've based our operations here at ISV from the very beginning on the idea of giving mercy to others. Jive doi Krishna nam sarva dharma sar. This was the statement of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that the essence of all dharma is to give mercy to other living beings by loudly chanting the holy names of the Lord. Loudly means so many things, but Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that the Brihat Madanga, or the printing of literature and wide distribution, is the loud chanting of Hare Krishna. It's the greater Madanga, he said. It's the bigger Madanga, because loud means it can penetrate areas that were normally impenetrable. And this is great mercy, because the living entities don't want to hear about Krishna in their state of ignorance. And Prabhupada compared it to a person who's in a lunatic asylum and thinking that I'm a Napoleon, I'm Jerry Garcia, I'm whoever. And even sometimes, he said, when the doctor comes to administer medicine, they'll become violent and try to hit the doctor. So preaching can be this kind of thankless task seemingly in one way. However, it's most appreciated by Krishna. In the Nectar Devotion, Prabhupada talks about how one becomes a friend of the Lord. We talked about Sakyam. And there he says that someone who goes out and preaches about Krishna becomes a dear friend of Krishna's. Priya. We heard at the beginning of this chapter, one has to become Priya, or dear to the Lord. And what does Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita? The person who preaches this message is the most dear to me. There will never be a servant more dear to me in this world than the person who preaches the message of Bhagavad Gita. That's an open invitation to preach and spread the movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this book distribution, we just happen to land at talk about an idea whose time has come. We're at a particular period in history when electronic books haven't taken over the world. They're just starting to look like they might. But books are still the medium in which people read for the most part. And we just happen to have them available, which we can't take for granted. I mean, for years we take the rain for granted, but now there's no more rain. Just look at the sky. There's not a cloud in the sky. And you can say, what? What do we do now? You just suffer. There's nothing you can do. So if there's no paper, if there's no ink, if there's no transportation for delivering the books, you can't get them. But right now we have availability of all these things. There's a rainstorm of books. The other day I talked I started getting early calls right after the meeting in Houston when we introduced this idea of distributing 1,008 sets of Bhagavatams nationwide and 250 Chaitanya Charitamritas. The next morning someone called me and said, the temple president in Brooklyn just ordered 108 sets. And I was like, and then I could imagine, I said, there's going to be a run on the bank. There won't be enough sets. So in a panic, I called Savas, who was visiting his son in Houston, in Dallas, and I said, Savas, we better order some sets fast. And so he called me back a couple days later and said, I just ordered 1,000 sets. For me, it's all they had. I said, tell them to print more quick because anything can happen. And so absorption in this consciousness of giving mercy to others is the quickest way to become recognized by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And come what may, whatever facilities we get here, and as we all can see, they're coming by the mercy of the Lord. This humble facility that we have now for worshiping Sri Sri Radha Krishna. We're satisfied in one way. In another way, we always want bigger, more, and so forth. But as long as we have the harmonious association of the devotees, loving friendships between our devotees, and the opportunity to go on hearing and chanting uninterrupted, and the opportunity to do some tangible service, which was specifically requested us by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada to profusely distribute books, what more could we want in life? And the rest, that comes by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In a second He can bestow, and in a second He can take away. He's the maker, He's the breaker. We're just humble servants. We do the best we can to increase our service. And so here's the good instruction for us to move over into our Sankirtan Ishtagoshti, in which we will brainstorm ways to improve the Sankirtan movement, is that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Sudhama Brahmana, in all circumstances now you have a very beautiful body, chant Hare Krishna incessantly. That's not hard to do, right? It's not a rhetorical question I'm actually asking, is it? How do you find that? After the Japa workshop, it improved. So, incessant chanting of Hare Krishna, is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so let's all agree. Incessant chanting of Hare Krishna. Yes or yes?
Yes.
Okay, and the other point was preaching. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally, from his own lotus mouth, has said, preach about Krishna and thus liberate living entities. And you can't have any more fun than that, going around liberating living entities. Knock, knock, knock. Who's going to open the door? It's like, hi, we're here, whether you like it or not. And guess what we brought you? Wake up. Come on. Open the door now. And, here's the book, here's the prasadam, here's the holy name. And it has to be done. It has to be done. That's the Lord's purpose for the creation. So this is the life. Sankirtan is real life. Incessant chanting Hare Krishna, and then giving the mercy to as many people as possible by distributing books. That's how I derailed myself. I was just saying about availability of books. Now, they're available now, so we should take advantage of this window of opportunity that we have in this particular time in history. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, in fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was just here a few minutes ago. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was here, then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Bhaktivinoda seconds ago in geological time. They're here. They're the fragrance of their beautiful bhakti is still in the air, and the request is still hanging in the air. I mean, the words that they spoke, please distribute these books. If you ever get money, print books. That sound vibration they uttered has not even dissipated yet. It's still in the air. We can reach out and touch it. And somehow or other, other institutions in the past have disintegrated, like the Gaudiya Math after Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur left. For infighting and all kinds of other reasons, the lack of a GBC, of a governing body commission that he asked for, it fell apart. And people went off in their own ways. They're all great souls in their own right, and there are so many pure devotees in that organization, but they weren't able to come together as a preaching organization in an effective way, like ISKCON has. And despite all that ISKCON's been through, and everyone that's in ISKCON has been through, it's holding together, and we have an opportunity right now, come what may, to increase the preaching. And I can't think of a better way. Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, these are tadiya. They're such dear paraphernalia to us because they are simultaneously non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they contain the purports of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. I dare anyone to find a better combination than that anywhere in the three worlds. The commentary of a pure devotee and the original book itself. And you won't find these expanded word for word and the original Devanagari anywhere else in the world. You look at Gita Press or any other place that's prolific in producing these books, and you won't find the quality that we have at the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. It's Prabhupada's own heart. So the support of book distribution, which is our focus here at ISV, in which we see that all other programs are important and vital as a management of the results of our preaching. So let's take full advantage of it in 2014, which we've just entered into, and which Malini reminded us the other day. We're late. That's how much pressure she's feeling. It's the 17th today? 17th? 18th. Oh, God. 18th of January, and she's feeling anxiety, and so is Sri Krishna Purushottam, that, we've already missed 18 days to move towards our goal. That's a kind of samadhi that one gets in. That's the kind of samadhi they're in over at Google, too, only for a different cause. They're sort of they're licking the outside of the bottle. This actually has real traction. You can tell I was very impressed by that visit to Google yesterday. So now we're going to talk. We're going to have a meeting until the wee hours of the night. It's going to go all the way till midnight. But there are devotees bringing prasadam and things like that. So don't worry. And we're going to talk about the goals for 2014 for book distribution. And we'll also talk about room for improvement, places room for improvement. Now, the way the meeting will go is, one thing is, it would be nice if someone would be on the computer and take copious notes so that we can see what we're collecting. Is that possible, to hook up the computer? Now, you can't disappear, of course, right? Whoever's taking the notes. Can we do it wirelessly and connect it to the...
I was thinking if we can, I put it in the Google.
Okay.
So if I share that, I think that will be useful.
Okay, so that is there, and then... What about new ideas and points? Can those be visibly But I mean, what if we have discussion and people say, here's 50 more points? So who's going to type? But you're going to be in the little cave over here? You're going to be out here. Okay. Fair enough. Let's see. Should we stop the broadcast? No. Keep the broadcast going. Anyone out there who's listening to the broadcast, what is the text-in number? 650-245-7018. 650-245-7018. 650-245-7018. So if you're out there watching and you'd like us to shut off the broadcast now before we have the meeting, please text in and say, please shut off the broadcast so that nobody else can see it. Please text in anyway. We'd like to hear from you. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Would you kindly put these beautiful Shastra Deities back? Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namah